𝕴𝖗𝖎𝖘𝖍. Welcome back to part 3. This is part 3 of James Bonswick's Irish Druids and Old Irish Religions. In this part we'll be going on 3 chapters. Now the first one is, unfortunately, and I have to apologise for in advance, it is on Patrick, and the second one is a small bit on St. Colmcille. Now after that we will be touching Irish opinions on Irish Druids. Now this is the opinions that were brought forward in 1894, and this would be the thinking of the time. Now you have to remember that this is the time of the Celtic revival in Ireland, and it is related quite a lot to the Victorian thinking that was a century previous. Now what it was is that they had limited evidence available of what they could do, and they had a load of missing blanks, so they filled in those blanks with Eastern mysticism, which was in vogue at the time. Thank you. St. Patrick and the Druids. Let's see what the so-called biographers of St. Patrick have to relate about the Druids. A work published at St. Omer in 1625 CE by John Heyman has a story. One day, as the saint said mass in the said church, a sacrilegious magician, the son of perdition, stood out without, and with a rod put in the window cast down the chalice and shed the holy sacrament. But God, without delay, severely punished so wicked a sacrilege. For the earth, opening his mouth after a most strange manner, devoured the magician, who descended alive down to hell. Again he wrote, a certain magician that was in high favour with the king, and whom the king revered, honoured as God, opposed him against St. Patrick, even in the same kind that Simon Magus resisted the apostle St. Peter. The miserable wretch being elevated in the air by the ministry of devils, and the king and the people looked after him as if he were to scale the heavens. But the glorious saint, with the force of his fervent prayers, cast him down to the ground, where, dashing his head against hard flint, he rendered up his wicked soul as to prey to the infernal fiends. The tripartite life of St. Patrick relates, Leary MacNeill possessed druids and enchanters who used to foretell, through their druidism and through their paganism, what the future for them. Coming to a certain town, the saint, according to history, found druids at the place who denied the virginity of Mary. Patrick blessed the ground, and it swallowed up the druids. This so-called book of 1625 is the authority for another story. 2 magicians with their magical charms overcast all the region with a horrible darkness for the space of 3 days, hoping by the means to debar Patrick's entrance to the country. Again it continues to, 9 magicians conspire the saint's death and have the more free access to him. They counterfeited themselves to be monks, putting on religious weeds. The saint, by divine information, knew them to be wolves wrapped in sheep's clothing, making therefore the sign of the cross against the children of Satan. Behold, fire descended from heaven and consumed them all 9. Now he is also have reported to cause the death of 12,000 idolaters at Tara. St. Patrick contended with the Druids before King Leary at Tara. 1. 𝕗𝖚 hardened the king's heart against preaching, so the saint prayed that he might be lifted out and die, even as St. Peter had obtained the death of Simon Magus. In an instant, 𝕗𝖚 was raised up in the air and died, falling on a stone. This 𝕗𝖚 had, as it said, previously foretold the saint's visit. A Talcean, or bald head, will come over the raging sea, with his perforated garments and his crooked headstaff, with his table at the end of his house, and all the people will answer, Amen, Amen. The authoress of Ireland, the 𝕗𝖚, ventured to write, when the apostle of Ireland went there, the people believed him, for he taught no new doctrine. She thought Druidism was not very unlike Christianity. Dr. Donovan, upon the 4 Masters, observes, nothing is clearer than Patrick engrafted Christianity on the pagan superstitions with so much skill that he won the people over to the Christian religion before they understood the exact difference between the 2 systems of beliefs. And so much of this half-pagan, half-Christian religion will be found not only in the Irish stories of the Middle Ages, but in the superstitions of the peasantry of the present day. God sees the worldly wisdom in dedicating to a saint the pillar stone, or sacred foundation. It is not necessary to discuss the question as to the individual saint himself, around which so much controversy has raged. They who read theology between the lines of old Irish history may be induced to doubt whether such a person ever existed, or if he were but a druid himself, such being the obscurity of old literature. St. Bridget's early career was associated with the Druids. A miracle she wrought on the production of butter caused her druidical master to become a Christian. Colgan contended that St. Patrick, by continually warring with Druids, exposed his body to 1,000 kinds of deaths. In the Guardsman of Cry of St. Patrick, which declares, Patrick made this hymn, we are informed that it was against all incantations of false prophets, against black laws of heretics, against surroundings of idolism, against spells of women, and of smiths, and of druids. The Annals of the Kingdom of Ireland by the Four Masters mentions that a number of stories relative to the Irish Druids, then believed to have once ruled Éireann. St. Patrick was a youthful slave to 𝕴𝖗𝖚𝖘, a druidical priest. 𝕴𝖗𝖚𝖘𝖍 therefore says, he must often have practiced heathenism rites in the presence of his household, and thus excited the horror of his Christian slave. Scoto Irish Druids. St. Columba, the Culdee, was much the same as St. Patrick in his mission work and his contests with Druids. He changed water into wine, stilled the storm, purified wells, brought down rain, changed winds, drove the devil out of a milk pail, of all things, and raised the dead to life. All that tradition acknowledged as miraculous in the Druids was attributed equally to Columba as to Patrick. Adamnan of Iona tells of some strange stories of his master. One tale concerns Bráithcin, the Druid. On a certain day, Bráithcin, while conversing with the saint, said to him, Tell me, Columba, when do you propose to set sail? To which the saint replies, I intend to begin my voyage after 3 days, if God permits me, and preserves my life. Bráithcin then said, You will not be able, for I will make the winds unfavourable to your voyage, and I will create a great darkness over the sea. The wind rose, and the darkness came, but the saint put it off, and the vessel ran against the wind and extraordinary speed, to the wonder of the large crowd. The saint wanted the Druid to release an Irish female captive, which he declined to do so. But Adamnan, an angel sent from heaven, strike him severely, has broken in pieces the glass cup which he held in his hand and from which he was in the act of drinking, and he himself is left half dead. Then he consented to free the Irish girl, and Columba cured him of the wound. Nice guy, wasn't he? Opinions on Irish Druids. Macloch wrote in his Etudes de mythologie celtique in 1869, observing some represented the Druids as the successors of the Hebrew patriarchs, the masters of Greek philosophy, the forerunners of Christian teaching. They have credited them with the honours of a religious system founded upon primitive monotheism, and crowned by a spiritualism more elevated than that of Plato and St. Augustine. One might perceive little of this in Irish tales, like the preceding Niflach is justified in adding. One will be at first confounded by the extreme disproportion which exists between the rare documents left by the past and the large developments presented by modern historians. Pliny speaks thus of the Druids. A man would think that the Persians learned all their magic from them, and Pomponius Mela affirmed they professed to have great knowledge of the motions of the heavens and the stars. Others write in the same strain. Who then were the Druids of the Greeks and Romans? Why did Caesar recognize such as living in Gaul? Why did Jamblichus make Pythagoras a disciple of Gaulish priests? Why did St. Clement say that the Druids had a religion of philosophy, and St. Cyril that they held but one God? Why should Origen, like the foe of early Christianity, Celsus, believe that the Druids of Gaul had the same doctrines as the Jews? Emerius speaks of Abaris, the sage of Scythia, both well acquainted with Greek, but with his description. Abaris came to Athens, holding a bow, having a quiver hanging from his shoulders, his body wrapped in a plaid and wearing trousers reaching from the soles of his feet to his waist. Cicero knew that Divitiacus, who professed the knowledge of nature's secrets, having though regarded as Hyperborean. Could these have been the Scythians from Tartary, the descendants of the wise men who gave their religion and the arrow-headed letters to Assyrian Semitic conquerors, who had come down as Turanian roamers to the plains of Babylon, and whose Chaldean faith spread even to Egypt and Europe? It would seem more probable, with respectful consideration of the learned Mauryan, who makes Wales the teacher of the world, that the wisdom should emanate from a people cultured long before the Abrahamic days, although subsequently regarded as rude shepherd Scythians, than proceed from a western land preserving no monuments of learning. Then the dress, the staff, the egg, and the other things associated with Druids had their counterpart in the East, from perhaps 5,000 years before our Christian era. As to so-called druidical monuments, no arguments can be drawn hence as to the primary sect of this mysticism, since they are to be seen nearly all over the world. An instance of the absurd ideas prevalent among the ancients respecting Druids is given in Dion Chrysostom. For without the Druids, the kings may neither do nor consult anything, so that in reality they are the Druids who reign, while the kings, though they sit on golden thrones, dwell in spacious palaces, and feed on costly dishes, are only their ministers. Fancy this relating to either rude Irish or Celt. Tolland makes out that the Lucan spoke to one, but Lucan said it did not. The Edinburgh Review of 1863 may well come to the conclusion that the place they ready fill in history is indefinite and obscure. Madame Blavatsky has her way of looking at them. They were the descendants of the last Atlanteans, and what is known of them is sufficient to allow the inference that they were Eastern priests akin to the Chaldeans and the Indians. She takes therefore an opposite view to that held by Mauryan. She beheld their god in the great serpent, and their fate in succession of worlds. Their likeness to the Persian creed is noticed thus. The Druids understood the morning of the sun in Taurus. Therefore, while all the fires were extinguished on the 1st of November, their sacred and indistinguishable fires alone remained to illuminate the horizon, like those of the Magi and the modern Zoroastrians. Poppo, a Dutchman of the 8th century, wrote the Office Druidum, and Occo, styled the last of the Frisian Druids, who was author of a similar work. Wirt in 1620 and Friccius of 1744 were engaged in the same subject. It is curious to note that St. Columba addressing God as "my Druid," and elsewhere saying, "my Druid is Christ, the Son of God." The Vates were an order known in Irish as the Fae. Some derived Druid from Druin, the old German for God. The word Drua applied to a Druidess. While many treat the Druids as religious, O'Curry asserts there is no ground whatever for believing the Druids to have been the priests of any special positive worship. Then, Valency declares that Druidism was not the established religion of the pagan Irish, but Buddhism. Yet Lake Clarny, formerly Loch Lenna, the Lake of Learning, the mystical but accomplished Massey tells us, an Irish name for Druidism is Mahis, and that includes the Egyptian dual thought called Mati, which applied into time is the terran of or 2 times at the base of all reckoning. Likely that the Druidic name is a modified form of Truhut. In Egypt, Terhut signifies the 2 times and before, so the Druidic science included the knowledge of the times beforehand and the coming times. Tolland, one of the earliest, most philosophical Irish writers on the subject, thus spoke of them in his History of the Druids, who were so prevalent in Ireland that to this hour their ordinary word for magician is dree. The art of magic is called 𝕲𝖚 and wand, which is one of the badges of the profession, the rod of Druidism, or the Slapna Druidic. Windle, in Kilkenny records, expressed this view. Druidism was an artfully contrived system of elaborate fraud and imposture. To them was entrusted a charge of religion, jurisprudence, and medicine. They certainly well studied the book of nature and were acquainted with the marvels of natural magic, the proportions of plants and herbs, and of astronomy what was then known. They may have also been skilled in mesmerism and biology. He taught that to the Druids exclusively were known all the occult virtues of the whole materia medica, and to him belonged the carefully elaborated machinery of oracles, omens, auguries, aeromancy, fascinations, exorcisms, dream interpretations and visions, astrology, palmistry, and so on. As this may demand too much from our fate, we may remember, as Canon Burke says, that the youth of these countries have been taught to regard the pagan Druids as educated savages, whereas they had the same opportunity of acquiring knowledge, and had really possessed as much as the pagans of the Peloponnesus. We should further bear in mind that the assurance of the Irish historian O'Curry that there are vast numbers of allusions to the Druids, and of specific instances of the exercise of their vocation, be it magical, religious, philosophical, or education, to be found in our old manuscripts. Has not much misapprehension been caused by authors concluding that all varieties of religion in Ireland proceeded from a class of men who, while popularly called Druids, may have not been connected with them? We know very far more than these varieties of faith in Ireland before Christianity than we do about any description of religion in Wales, and yet the Druidism of one country is reported as so different from in the other immediately contagious. Such are difficulties meeting the study of history. The Irish druidical religion, like that of Britain and Gaul, has given rise to much discussion, whether it began, as some say, when Suetonius drove the Druids from Wales, or began in Ireland, before known in either Britain or Gaul, direct from the east. The druidical religion, says Keneally in the Book of God, prevailed not only in Britain, but likewise all over the east. 𝕴𝖚k𝖍 writes, there existed very anciently in Ireland a particular worship which, by nature of its doctrines, by the character of its symbols, and the names of even its gods, lies near to the religion of the Cabrers of Samothrace, emanated probably from Phoenicia. Mrs. Sophie Bryant thinks that to understand the Irish non-Christian tradition and worship, we should understand the corresponding tradition and worship and their history, for all the peoples have issued from the same Aryan home. Ledwick is content with saying that the Druids possess no internal or external doctrine, either veiled by symbols or clouded in enigmas or any religious tenets, but the charlatanery of barbarian priests and the grossest Gentile superstition. While Professor O'Curry had no ground whatsoever for believing the Druids to have been the priests of any special positive worship, and Valancy could say, from all I could collect from Irish documents relative to the religion of the heathen Irish, it appears that the druidical religion never made a part of it. Popular opinion has always been in the other direction, yet Valancy would credit Druids with some religion when he mentions the druidical oracular stone in Irish, Logan, in Cornish, Logan, into which the Druids pretended that the Log, or divine affluence, descended from when they consulted it. Dr. Ridgely depreciates the Druid when writing of the early Irish missionaries. They did not encounter any arch-Druid as the representative or head of a national religion. They found no priesthood occupying a definite political position which the ministries of the new religion could appropriate. The Welsh arch-Druid Mayfair told Higher Ground when saying, this Gorset has survived the bardic chairs of Greece and Rome. It has survived the institutions of Egypt, Chaldea, and Palestine. He declared, Druidism is a religious system of positive philosophy teaching truth and reason, peace and justice. He believed that the Druids of what Burnouf taught the Hindu Rashish in their metaphysics and religion were founded in a thorough grasp of physical facts.
Marian, his favourite disciple, boldly avows that Druidism, like Freemasonry, was philosophy founded on natural law, and not religion in the ordinary sense of that term. So 𝕴𝖗𝖚 regarded Ossian's heroes for the great part Kabbalistic and indicative of the solar worship. Finan, or Fingal, bespeaks of the Phoenician 𝕗𝖍 or dog star worshipper, in which Cuchulainn with his croix or belt is but a variation. In Smith's Dictionary of the Bible, the religion of the Phoenicians is described in the way Marian has done of that of the Druids, a personification of the forces of nature which, in its more philosophical shadowing forth the supreme powers, may be said to have represented the male and female principles of production. The Sabbath, a Babylonian word, was, it said, kept on the 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th of months, as with the Magi of the East. Philo says all nations of antiquity kept the seventh day holy. Profer mentions the same thing of the heathen. Professor Sayce finds it a day of rest with the ancient Assyrians, as Dr. Schmidt of Temple Pagan Worship. Eusebius asserted that almost all philosophers acknowledged it. The Roman pontiffs regulated the Sabbath, and Roman schoolboys had then a holiday. The Persian word Shabbat is clearly of Assyrian origin. The authoress of Mazzaroth says, the Assyrians, Babylonians, Egyptians, Chinese, and the natives of India were acquainted with the 7 days divisions of time, as were the Druids. The sun, moon, and 5 planets were the guardians of the days.